Grab some popcorn and get comfortable because you are in for a wild story. Okay? Happy New Year and welcome to my channel. So it's finally 2019. What do you know? For most of us, January 1st is known as New Year's. Get your resolutions ready, gym memberships going, start the year off right. Haitians typically celebrate by eating themselves bowls and bowls and just ridiculous amounts of soup jumeau. And that's a tradition that dates back all the way to 1804 when Haiti gained its independence from France. So while Haitians were slaves, they actually had to cook soup jumeau for their masters, but they weren't even allowed to eat any themselves. I do wonder if, like, the chefs at least got the taste, you know what I'm saying? Because, like, how you gonna know if you got the seasoning right if you ain't even allowed to taste it? I don't know. I wasn't there for it, but they weren't allowed to eat it. So soup jumeau is typically made from butternut squash or pumpkin, and everything else is basically bonus. I know that all Haitian families makes their soup jumeau different. Soup jumeau is a very important part of Haitian culture. It's a symbol of triumph and unity, and it's freaking delicious. So good. Like, oh my gosh. Why do we have to wait till January 1st? I'm just kidding. Our country's independence wasn't something that happened overnight. It was a long, hard battle that was never in our favor. Grab some popcorn and get comfortable because you are in for a wild story. Okay? This story begins with Europe's period of discovery. So Europe begins to see the value in discovery and claiming new trade routes. Populations continuing to increase and their food still has no seasoning. While merchants have traded with countries like India before, it was not something that was very common, mostly because of how expensive and dangerous it was to even get to India. Everyone wanted a piece of that. European countries are starting to get frustrated, and some of them are even starting to run out of ideas. So when somebody like Christopher Columbus shows up, as an explorer, he sees an opening. He knows that European governments are starting to get, dang it, what's the word? They're starting to get, did I write it down? Desperate. Kind of like the situation with the moon, want to be the first one there. At this time, India was the moon. They want to get there first. They want to be able to have control of the trade routes first because that would be amazing for their economy. Okay, so this is a really big deal. Christopher Columbus believed that the earth was round in a time when it was still an unpopular opinion.
Instead of traveling through the land or all the way around the continent of Africa, why don't we just try going directly across the Atlantic Ocean? The world is round, right? So we should end up back in India eventually.
So that was his plan. That was actually his idea, okay? However, he had no idea. Nobody had any idea of how big the world actually was. So in theory, maybe this would have worked if, you know, North America didn't exist. But alas, it does. So, the leaders of Spain at the time decided that we are desperate, we have no other ideas, this is probably our best shot, whatever, let's just send him with a few ships and see what happens. And they set him off and to go find India. So that was the plan. Searching for India, Christopher Columbus stumbles across several Caribbean islands, one of which being Hispaniola. Let's just say it did not go well. When he discovers the island, he decides to create an outpost so that when they're traveling back and forth, they have somewhere to stop, rest, recuperate, regain supplies, whatever else you need to do on a rest stop. So when he came back to find that his outpost was destroyed and that his sailors were killed, he was not too happy about that. He decided, all right, these people need to be colonized. He noticed two things about the natives. One, they wear gold, and two, their most advanced weapon seemed to be the spear. He did the math. Guns, spears. They won that round. Let's just say that. Christopher Columbus decided to colonize the island and enslave the natives. So anyone over the age of 14 was forced to work and produce a certain amount of gold. If they were not successful in doing so, their hands would get cut off. Not only were the natives being literally worked to death, but the Spanish were also bringing all of those European diseases over to this island. Most of the natives ended up dying through European disease, malnutrition, suicide, mass killings, and probably more that we don't even know about. This period of time was known as the Taino Genocide. By 1531, it was estimated that only 600 Tainos were left alive on the island of Hispaniola. Today, there are actually no discernible traces of the Taino people at all. So this is actually considered one of the few successful genocides. So basically, the Spanish and Christopher Columbus ended up killing off too much of the island's native population, and they didn't have enough workers to get the gold that they wanted to be produced. They had also created cotton and sugar plantations, and they needed people to work those plantations because the white people weren't gonna do it. So the increasing need for slaves actually improved the profitability of the slave trade. So the colonies that they created on these Caribbean islands would actually trade their natural resources for more slaves. This was becoming very profitable for Spain, and other Europeans were starting to peep that. And of course, they wanted a piece of it too. They weren't about to let Spain control all of the money. So they actually hired pirates to attack passing Spanish ships. They would steal their gold, their slaves if they had any, whatever else they had on the ship. These countries didn't want any official problems with Spain, so that's why they would hire these pirates to do the dirty work for them. Win-win, right? This actually introduced an era of pirateering in the Caribbean. A group of French pirates eventually settled on a part of the island. When the Spanish found this out, they actually decided to move their people away from the pirates, hoping to starve them out and to keep them from stealing any of their own things. That plan definitely backfired. Those colonies began to grow and thrive, and that is what created the divide. One part is controlled by the French, the other part by the Spanish. By 1720, Haiti was producing 2/3 of the world's sugar, coffee, and indigo dye, and it was known as the Pearl of the Antilles. Imagine how the slaves felt being treated lower than cattle in a colony that's making so much money. Naturally, there were Haitian slaves that decided to run away. Most of the runaway slaves would actually escape into the mountains because the Europeans did not know how to deal with the landscape there. So there was no way that they would be able to go and retrieve them and bring them back safely from whatever is up in these mountains. So usually if you got up to the mountains, you are free. Yeah, there's actually a saying, "Des monts, gain mont," which basically means behind the mountains are more mountains. Even with the roads that have been built today, traveling through the mountains in Haiti is not easy. So these runaway slaves that created settlements in the mountains were referred to as maroons. So they would actually raid French settlements for food, water, and supplies so that they could survive up in the mountains. And sometimes they would even find ammunition, and that's what they were able to use to defend themselves on these raids. While maroon settlements started to grow on different areas of the island, for the most part, they were largely unorganized. And that's where the Makendo comes in. The Makendo was born in West Africa and brought to Haiti as a slave at 12 years old. He would actually hold secret meetings and give speeches on plantations in order to convince more slaves to run away and join them in the mountains. This is how the Maroons were able to start growing their numbers. He really formalized a group by appointing captains and other points of leadership. This created structure, formal training, and discipline, which the Maroons definitely needed if they were going to be able to fight against the French. While the Maroons were able to collect some weapons and ammunition here and there, they did not have enough to win a whole entire war. So the Makendo would actually teach his followers to poison their masters so that they can run away. Actually became a really great tactic that allowed the Maroons to grow in numbers at the same time decreasing the number of French settlers. The Makendo Rebellion is said to be one of the first organized slave revolts that the world has heard about. But of course Europe would want to keep those things under tight wraps. Any news of revolution automatically causes a domino effect in other countries. So Europe tried to stop information from this revolution getting out, but Haitians always did have a special way of spreading information. They sure do know how to talk. Ultimately, one of his followers was caught and tortured into revealing the Makendo's location. After doing so, the French captured him and publicly executed him in order to set an example for everyone else. Not only that, but they also enforced stricter rules. No colored people on the island, regardless if they were a slave or not, were able to meet after 7 p.m., make homemade medicine, participate in commerce, carry weapons, or like breathe without being in trouble. So the French thought they was doing something, but the seed had already been planted. The Haitian slaves have no intention of giving up. Okay, so to give you some more context, there was a specific social ranking on this island. Okay, so it went from black slaves, free black people, mulattoes, the little whites, and then the planters, owners, merchants, businessmen, obviously all white. Eventually the mulattoes, or mixed people, were about equal in number to the amount of white people on the island. And the French knew that that was not good, because if the mulattoes were to start siding with the blacks, they would be outnumbered. So the French made a deal with these mulattoes. They promised that the mulattoes would be recognized as equals to the whites on the island as long as they did not help the blacks gain their freedom from slavery.
Deal or no deal?
They took that deal. They wanted freedom, no matter what it took. Unfortunately, the French done lied to them. Even though they were officially recognized as equal on the island, they were being persecuted all throughout the country. Hundreds of mulattoes were murdered and killed, mistreated, not able to get work. Same stuff, same story. And they have no friends, not amongst the whites and not amongst the blacks after they just dissed them, right? Wrong. So Haitians learned a very valuable lesson in this, and it's that unity is everything. It's literally on our flag now. Union fait la force. It means unity is strength. So that's a lesson that they learned from that interaction, that you need each other if you're going to win. Even though it was messed up, they were forgiven and they rejoined forces. It was the unity of the blacks and the mulattoes in Haiti that even made the revolution possible. Although the Makendo had been publicly executed, of course that was not the last leader to take control of the Haitian Revolution. His intelligence and strategic thinking really made him a great leader for the Haitian Revolution. Because Toussaint and his troops gained control of the island, France started to bring in the big guns. At this time, the French army was under the control of Napoleon Bonaparte. He sent his brother, backed by about 20,000 troops, to put out this little revolution problem. However, he underestimated Haitians, okay? His brother actually had to request backup twice. That's right, 20,000 extra soldiers, twice. Unfortunately, Toussaint was eventually captured in 1802, and he actually died of pneumonia while in custody. Don't know if I believe that, but that's the official story, I guess. Upon getting captured, he knew it was probably the end for him, so before leaving, he appointed a new leader. This was Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Dessalines is actually the leader who led us across the finish line. After the Battle of Vertières, which the French lost horribly, they finally decided that they were going to pull out. In his entire career, Napoleon Bonaparte fought around 60 battles, losing only 9. The Battle of Vertières in Haiti was his third L. Take that L. Take it. Eventually, Dessalines signed a treaty with the French troops saying that they would take the remaining French and leave the island. We had finally won. While the Haitian government had declared its independence on January 1st of 1804, France actually didn't even recognize them as an independent country until 1825. So today we celebrate by eating soup chamoun because they told us we couldn't. They also told us we couldn't win. And look how that turned out. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I hope you learned something new.